This show contains profanity, advice you should never follow, humor that you might not enjoy. The names have been changed. Do not try this at home.
Hey folks, Box Holiday coming at you. This week we had a little bit of a snafu with the recording of this episode. Lots of stops and starts and fun computer issues. If anybody knows anything about how to recover about 20 minutes of the best shit we've ever done, let me know. Another thing, we recorded this the night before the Boston Marathon. Later in the episode, you'll hear me talk about a discussion I had with Blimey about some of the terrorist issues they had over there. I know, really random for an Appalachian Trail podcast, but again, most of the stuff we talk about on here is random. So anyway, continue to follow us. Man, you guys have really been showing up on Facebook and on Twitter. We've been gaining followers left and right. You can follow us on Facebook. Just look up Pox and Puss. You can find me. I'm Pox Holiday, probably the only one on Facebook. You can find us on Twitter, @Pox and Puss. Follow us on Instagram, @Pox and Puss. And we haven't touched our Pinterest board in 5 months. Alright, so let's get going with episode 15, Magic Eyes versus Whiskey Slaps.
Greetings, Yellow Blazers, Blue Blazers, I don't know, Bill Bryson fans, Bill Bryson haters.
Captain and Tennille lovers.
Oh, and the big red balloon.
Wah, 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 wah.
My name is Pox Holiday, and sitting to my right is...
Puss in Boots.
And this week we're going to talk a little bit about something like, I don't know, the norovirus. Whiskey slaps. And Robert Redford's Red Ford truck. All right, we'll be right back.
So I was doodling around on my phone and realized that... So who is producing A Walk in the Woods?
Robert Redford.
Robert Redford.
Right, yes.
And what was the title of the last episode that you did with Blimey?
What was the last? Oh, snap. I see where you're going with this.
Yeah.
A ride in the red Ford Ranger.
It's Robert Redford. He's stealing people. Oh, he's hoarding them so that they can be extras in his movie.
Oh my God.
It all makes sense now.
My life has changed.
Bam.
It's like looking at a Magic Eye picture in the mall.
Yep. Only
to find out that Sundance is kidnapping people.
Yeah.
It's insane.
What does that have to do with a Magic Eye poster?
Well, it's like all of a sudden you're like, oh, there's a sailboat. It's like, boom.
It's a schooner.
See that Easter rabbit over there? There's a guy, and there's a... Damn it.
Can you see Magic Eye posters?
Yeah, I'm pretty good at them.
Can that be the closer?
Sure. I'm not proud.
You seem pretty damn proud.
I did, didn't I?
When you said...
I did.
Yeah, I'm really good at it.
Yeah, I'm really good at them. All the talk about the illness between Hot Springs and Irwin has got me thinking about my time in that stretch, and mainly about Irwin, like to beauty spot and that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. I saw somebody put a quote up, a Jennifer Farr Davis quote up on something, and I read it, and it was like the beginning of one chapter. She talks about beauty spot, and it was like that for me. What she went through, it was just cloudy. I didn't see anything. But I've talked about before the like 2-3 stoner teenage kids that were camped out and said, yeah, you can climb in the van, man, kind of hang out.
Get in the van.
And then when I got to Damascus and had to replace my boots at the ski house, that kid worked there. But that whole stretch in there, I had something. I fucking completely fucked myself up with it. So I started laughing at ski house.
Ski house?
Ski house. Oh, the ski house.
Eis mal Scheiße.
Eis in mein Scheiße. I was one of the first people to stay at Uncle Johnny's. Uncle Johnny's in Irwin. I think the day before we got there, the vending machines arrived that were outside.
Ooh.
And that's a hell of a trip down if you're heading north. Or I couldn't imagine hiking south out of that place. That would just suck ass. But hiking down just took forever, and wasn't a lot of fun kind of getting through there. But I remember coming down and just thinking to myself, like, whenever I get down here, and like, put it this way, Uncle Johnny's was so new that it wasn't on any book.
Right.
And so
hard to miss.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, it's right there. Right. Yeah. But I mean, like, but so I'm thinking, okay, I've got to get down here. I've got to somehow get into Irwin a few miles away. Are we just going to stay at NOC because you could camp there? Like, what are we going to do? So we get there, and they're like, I remember thinking to myself, like, I just need something to drink. I just need like a soda, man. And it was like, bing. I'm like, are this vending? I'm not gonna get my hopes up. I think those are vending machines. Don't get your hopes up. Don't get your hopes up. And then it was like, oh, these are vending machines. I can't. Oh, so
he doesn't have vending machines anymore.
Oh, really?
He just has 2 refrigerators on the porch that are full of sodas.
Oh,
You can like put a buck in and take a soda.
oh, okay.
I think he's got Gatorade too.
Well, that's not a bad way. But yeah, it was just like, a few drink machines outside. And he had just kind of had a little store going inside. And so we're sitting there, and we're like, well, where can we stay? And he's like, well, it's, whatever it was. It was like, it's X amount to stay in the bunkhouse. And I feel like the bunkhouse was full or something, or I'm not sure. He was like, or you can camp for, a lesser amount. Yeah. And so it was like, well, yeah, I'm just going to stay here, just chill out for the night and then tomorrow push in. But he's like, yeah, if you want to. He was cleaning out an area down by the river to set up like a little campsite area. And I haven't been back to Irwin since then, so I don't really know what it looks like over there at all. But like, he was cleaning out an area, and it just kind of had some trash and stuff, like just stuff that floats up from the river there. Mm-hmm. And they had cleared some of the brush away. And so it was like, yeah, you can set up your tents up down there. And he said, actually, if you want to, I think he gave us a pretty good discount, saying like, well, if you want to fill up a trash, like each of you fill up a trash bag, you can just stay down there for free. Because he was still in the beginning stages. So It was like he needed help more than he needed the cash to do that stuff right then. And so I was like, all right, cool. Sounds perfect. So we went down there, each filled up, did a really good job. Filled it up. Didn't just put big shit in there. Like, oh, here it is. Really did a good job. And went up, walked into the store, and said, yeah, we put the trash bags out there. He's like, oh, cool. He's like, man, thank you guys so much for doing that. Thank you so much. Mm-hmm. You guys, do you want a bag of chips? Like we were talking like a full size like bag of Doritos.
Like family size.
Yeah, it's like a regular, full, not like a little individual bag of Doritos.
Yeah. And
he's like, you guys want some chips? And it was like, you know how you just say like, oh, no.
And then afterwards you're like, oh.
Yeah, I was like, no. And he was like, oh, yeah, you're right. Here, here's another bag. If you want to fill that up, you can have the chips. And I was like, oh, wait, if I hadn't protested, you would have just given me the chips. But it was like, oh, yeah, you're right. Yeah. Here's another bag. If you want to fill that bag up, you get the chips. And I remember being like, that's fucked up. I'm not going to do as good a job of filling this bag up because I want those goddamn chips.
And, 2 or 3 or 4 of us would like make kind of a human shield inside the tarp to make sure that none of us got too cold.
Wow. Now I had perfect weather through the Whites except for Madison Hut. It was we watched a guy kind of pull the same story that I've told about Hexacuba shelter, like somebody running with a wall of rain behind them. Same thing, dude, like running, jumped up onto the porch of Madison Hut and like slid in, and then like a couple of seconds later, like wham, the bottom fell out, and like nobody went outside the rest of the night. And like, it was one of those situations where there was a guy that was like, yeah, such and such is coming back there. And like, dude never comes. And you're kind of like,
hope he made it.
and it was one of those where I was so sick that it was kind of like, well, you guys have fun looking for him if you want to do that.
I'm going to drink water and shit it out 20 minutes later.
Yeah, if I'm lucky.
Right.
But so I had made it through. I made it through Lake of the Clouds, and then had to go up Washington that day, and just the story about me rattling the walls of Lake of the Clouds and all that, and then left the next morning.
He's talking about poop, right?
I'm talking about poop.
Yeah, okay.
And I wound up getting up there, and was just wiped out. Just physically wiped out. It wasn't, it's not a really particularly difficult hike. It just takes a while. You're open, but it was a beautiful day. Got up there, tons of cars, tons of people, and like, I was genuinely, I had two plans in mind, because I was so sick. Had two plans in mind. Either I was going to lay down somewhere in the visitor center on top of Washington. I was either going to lay down somewhere in there and just hope I looked sick enough that somebody was like, we need to take this young man to a hospital. Mm-hmm. My other thought was, and I thought, if I don't get picked up by someone, then I'm just going to lay here until they close, and they will kind of be forced to do something with me, because I was just so weak. I was just so, oh God.
Yeah.
And then I wound up, my other idea was, maybe with all these cars up here, is there anybody that will pick us up? Like, and I think at one point, we stood up there and like put our thumbs out, and somebody was like, you can't do that up here. And it's like,
yeah, New Hampshire is the state that they will arrest you if you're hitchhiking.
oh, really?
Yeah, it's like super against the law.
That's right. Yeah. And I think we just didn't know that stuff yet or anything,
Yeah.
but we were like, like, oh God, it just felt horrible. So, I remember like, there's that pile of rocks on top that's really truly the top of Mount Washington. I mean, there were just like people stacked up there, and people are getting their pictures taken. And I remember I like just walked up, put my hand on it, and like went back down. And Barf's like, has to ask somebody up there, like, hey, will you take a picture of me? Because like, I just went and just like touched it so I could say I did it, and then just got back down. Hiked down, started hiking down the trail, and one of my worst fears, I've already probably on top of Mount Washington, I probably shit 10 times, it was one of those.
Yeah.
And then on the way down, my worst fear, the Cog Railway was coming up, and I had to moon the Cog Railway. But for 2 days,
You were really scared.
2 days, I'd had a pretty initial reaction. I was pretty Pavlovian at this point to pants down, start shitting.
Yeah.
So it was like, well, guess I've got to moon the Cog. And so like, I felt so bad that
You were going to be
I looked over.
looking in your big brown eye.
La, 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 la. And
yeah.
I remember looking over, and it was like, I'd heard stories of like, people having coal thrown at them, and people getting angry, and
People getting arrested.
that kind of thing. And people are looking, and again, nobody should ever do anything that we suggest,
Never.
that we say we did on here, ever. So I'm sitting there, and there's a guy on the back, which is like really where the engine is, I believe. Isn't that how like it pushes up, I think? And so there's this guy on the back, just dirty as hell. And he looks at us, and it's like, yeah. And he's back there. He's like, and you could just barely hear him. And he's pumping his fist in the air, and he's like, yeah, man, go for it. And we're like, all right. Like, I'd always heard the trouble came from.
We're being egged on by the caboose master.
Yeah. He's like, yeah, man, fucking go for it. And we're like, all right. I didn't even take off my pack. I think I undid my belt buckle, and then just like pulled down my pants. And I think I did smack it once or twice, and then put them on. And then we just like booked it down the trail. But like, I was like, oh, just clenching, I was like, oh God, took off, And then the other thing you have to deal with when you're in the whites and you have Giardia is up on top of Mount Washington. I've talked about this, I believe, but there are those like slide a quarter in to the viewfinder, on top there, people can look around.
Yeah.
And you're above tree line. It's like,
Oh, boy.
I don't want anybody to be Looking in my big brown eye. It's 100% natural flavors.
Bullshit. I do remember in the whites, that was, but I kept being kind of draggy, so I think that was during a phase where whenever I would resupply, I would grab a 5-hour energy or two.
Right.
Which worked really well for me, like turned me into a fucking superhero. I would just like hike like a crazy woman.
Mm-hmm.
But they had an urgent kind of a laxative effect.
Oh, yeah.
About 20 minutes after I drink it. And I could pretty much time it. Like in 20 minutes, I really need to be ready for this. And I remember like hiking uphill and being like, when I get to the top of this, I need to drink this 5-hour energy. So I get to the top, drink the 5-hour energy, and crest the top to realize it's ridgeline the entire way down.
Oh, yeah.
And I can see ridgeline for a very long way. And there is not a whole lot. There's a couple of like those like sort of low-lying shrub that are all windswept and you know, like 2 feet tall or less. So I start hiking downhill, and sure enough, it was like, luckily it had become downhill where you needed to like use your hands kind of thing. So when I felt the imminent was upon me,
Right.
I ended up like, I think that was the only time that I did like a monkey hang from a tree somewhere and just pooped. And I remember like as soon as I had gotten my pants back up, like that was when my friends from the UK like popped around the corner and they're like, we're so excited to see you. And I'm like, oh God, you were about to be looking in my big brown eye. Holy shit.
Oh, that would be a fun video. Just extreme pooping, like, you know. No, maybe not.
It's called Lovers Caught in the Act. Flex.
Maybe it's a little more obscure than I remember it being.
Time to have sex.
Oh, he's just walking around having a good time.
Well, apparently he's flexing, having sexing.
Mad Cobra.
He can stretch and kick.
So I think in addition to trying to be in Richard Linklater's film, I think we should also try and maybe see if there's a way we could meet the girl with the red balloon from Bittersweet Motel.
I hope she's still alive.
I hope so too.
She may not be.
She did a lot of.
She did a lot of drugs.
Yeah. What was that? What was she? She had a balloon.
Nitrous?
Did she have a nitrous balloon?
I think so.
I think one of the best parts about that scene.
It's a great song, number one. It turned me back on to Captain and Tennille for sure.
Yeah, and if anybody hasn't seen it, we were looking earlier just to try and find the scene, but I couldn't find it on YouTube or anything like that. But there's a video, there's a movie that Fish made about themselves called Bittersweet Motel, like 99, 2000, and it was at the New Year's.
Hershey.
Oh, it was at Hershey. That's right. When they were outside. Was that it?
I thought so.
No, I think it might be Lemon. It might actually be Lemon Wheel. That would be funny.
Lemon Wheel.
I can't remember. But they have like they had a radio station in the parking lot, and they were waiting for the radio station that was being broadcast in the parking lot to start up at 6 a.m. I think that was it. It was like 6 a.m. or something like that. Early as hell. And this girl,
that's right. And they're just like, no, we're not gonna.
Yeah, and they're just waiting and waiting and waiting. But how does it start off? It starts off with her like, whoa, whoa. Is that how it starts off?
She exercises her right to empty the balloon, and then she just starts going, wow, 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 wow. And then Captain and Tennille Love Will Keep Us Together starts playing, and she dances her fucking ninnies off.
Yeah.
And if I recall, she had nice ninnies, and they were under a white sweater without a bra.
And I think that white sweater was more like a cotton thermal long
Yeah,
sleeve.
that's what it was. Oh, yeah.
And it was a little loose, and she has this red balloon that still has a little bit left in it.
Dancing.
But one of the best parts of that scene is like the camera starts, kind of going away, trailing back, kind of panning back, and they're kind of walking off to go do their thing. And then her pudgy friend came into the scene and just does that, like does a little thing in front of her face. And that is like probably my favorite part of the scene, besides seeing the ninnies.
You are right. It was like a organic cotton Henley. Yeah. And I bought so many Henleys because I really wanted to look like her in one of those.
Really?
Yeah.
You bought a shirt because of the girl with the red balloon?
She worked it. She made it look so good. Did. I wanted to be part of it. I didn't have the magic. As far as I know, you don't have to stay in the huts. Skylar Moon had asked if you had to stay in the huts. You do not, but the whites kind of follow the same rules as the national parks, where it's like there are very designated camping spots, and a lot of them are run by the AMC, the Appalachian Mountain. And so the nice thing is those campsites usually have like a really nice privy, and usually they have camping platforms instead of like just dirt areas or whatever. They're usually pretty nice. They're very primitive, and by primitive I mean like it is campsites, but it's not like a drive up camp area.
Right.
Like any supplies that might be there is packed in, and usually there's a host, the same way that you would at like a drive up campsite, but this guy has to pack in as well, and usually they run on 5, 6, 7 day shifts, I believe.
Yeah.
And usually you have to pay. I think it's something like it was $8, I think, when I was on trail. And if I recall, stealth camping is not legal in the whites, or you can get a fine for it. But there are places and people that do, of course.
I remember somebody that I just did not enjoy being around. Like, he was talking a big game about how he wanted to go up on top of this, go up on top of whatever it was. Mm-hmm. Like, Franconia. I can't remember which mountain it was. But we were camped down in some, it was a shelter. I remember it was some type of shelter between a couple of mountains. This guy just kept going on and on. Yeah, I'm going to go do this. I'm going to go do this. And there was an older hiker there with us, probably some guy in his 50s. And we're just kind of all like, yep, just listening to this guy talk about how he's going to go up on this thing. And he had talked about it so damn much that the other guy was just like, well, why don't you go do it? Fucking do it, or shut the fuck up and get the hell out of here. And it was like, I think he left. And then I remember the next morning, like, passing him like a quarter mile later, like, not much higher than where we were. Like, just like, yeah, I decided not to. Had some big reason why.
Really
didn't want
bag
to
that
do
peak,
it.
man.
Yeah, got
really
to go bag that peak, man. Such and such did it the other night. And he kept naming like another person. I was like, I hate that guy too. I'm not trying to be a dick. I'm not trying dick free on the AT. But still, you're just like, all right, man. Like, you're just annoying.
Did you stay in huts often?
In that stretch there where you kind of had to, like
I don't remember any of the huts' names.
Yeah, well, there's
Lonesome Lake is the only one I can remember.
Lake of the Clouds, and then going up and over that, I believe the next one was Madison Hut.
Yeah.
And I was so sick by the time I got to Madison Hut that they sent us down the access trail that they take to get to their cars real quickly. Mm-hmm. And so then we just were like down in a place where like people are not used to seeing hikers. And we were trying to hike into, was it Gorham?
Yeah.
Maybe the most northern town there. We were trying to hitch into there because we had like mail drops and that kind of thing. And it was like, I guess at that point in time, I can't remember how far it was. It wasn't very far from Madison Hut to whatever. But I just remember like you had to go over two more presidentials, and that was about it. But they sent us down, like they're like, you need to go down. Like, you need to go down. So we went down that way, and it was only like a mile and a half. So finally somebody stopped and picked us up, put us back in the pickup truck, dropped us off. And then I remember that there was a guy that was like the son of the people that ran the place that we were staying at. I can't remember which one it was, but they drove us back up, and we did the 1.5 miles back up. When I was feeling better, we slack packed the rest of it in. Just got up early one morning, just did the rest of it. I just get the fuck over with.
Yeah.
But yeah. So I think those were 2 of the huts that I stayed in. And I think I stayed like in the campsites or the shelters the rest of the time. I remember at one point in time, this was around the time that universities were just starting to be like, hey, you're a freshman, come 2 weeks early and, we'll take you in the backcountry.
Yeah.
And so you saw some of the most expensive gear in the world paired up with like jeans. And I remember we met in the same day, we met like Brown, Rice, Rutgers, yeah. Like I think it was like like Princeton, Harvard, like they all had people out there, and I remember just being so worn out and so ill still, and I'm sitting there, and the Brown University comes up. It's like 20 kids, something like that, and they came up and they're like, so said something about like. Somehow college came up, of course, and they're like, well, where do you guys go? And without thinking, just like dumb kid, I go, state. And they like looked at us, and they're like, which state? And I was like, oh fuck, North Carolina. But they're like, state.
I'll go to state.
You ever heard of Scotty McCreery? I'll go to state with him. Oh, let's see, what else? I don't remember a lot of the whites because it just like it was a dehydrated nightmare.
Yeah.
But
my experience in the white was sort of clusterfuck because it got broken up by bad weather. I feel like I spent an inordinate amount of time like waiting in North Conway for weather to get better.
Right.
And then it really didn't. Like it got better enough to hike, but it never got better enough to see your hand in front of your face. So it was pretty much like a hunkered down, like, let's just do this as fast as we can without dying. I know that I stayed in 3 huts. I couldn't tell you the names of them. I know that one of them was Lonesome Lake. And I can also tell you that the upside to being in the whites in the off season is if you're really polite to the hut crews and make friends with them, like a lot of times they will extend to you luxuries that they have control over. I slept in a bed every time I slept at a hut.
I got HJs in each one.
You did not.
You're right.
Oh, damn dirty liar.
From myself.
And when I was at Lonesome Lake, so the hut crews, okay, imagine the hut crews are basically like camp counselors. They're assigned to these huts and they have to pack in everything, and people that pay big money, and when I say big money, it's like $70 per person per night or something like that, to sleep in a bunkhouse and eat oatmeal in the morning.
Yeah.
But the hut crews like have to pack in food for themselves.
Yeah.
They make dinner, and I guess usually the dinner is pretty good. They have like coffee and lemonade and water out all day long. They usually make soup for hikers that you can pay like $1 or $2 or something like that for a bowl of soup or something.
Yeah.
And but they have to hike in all the supplies, which includes like toilet paper and anything and everything that it provisionally.
They carry some pretty big ass packs.
They carry huge packs, and I think the packs that they carry are like these crazy. They look like chairs. They're like ladder back chairs.
Yeah.
And it's just like what they. I can't really remember, but when the lake hut crews are done like taking care of everything, and they've fed everybody and they've cleaned up all the dishes and this, that, and the other, well then like basically you get to hang out with your co buddies. Like And most of them like end up shacking up at some point or another, and like
course.
it's like the real world, but
It's one
on
of the
a
perks.
on a mountain. And but so I know, right? That's it. That's gonna be the next location. The real world, the whites.
That's our next $100,000 idea.
Yeah. So, but I'm talking to one of the hut crews, and I think it was at Lonesome Lake, and having this conversation about like, so what do you guys do? And they're like, basically once people head to bed, if it's quiet, like we'll have a fucking party. And I was like, well, I mean, it's got to be tough. Like it's not like you can pack out cases of beer or anything. And they're like, oh no, we play whiskey slaps. And I was like, whiskey slaps? And they're like, yeah, you've never heard of whiskey slaps? I'm like, no. So I played a night of whiskey slaps with these guys. And basically what whiskey slaps is, because they had limited provisions in that it's not like you bring beer, it's not like you bring soda, you don't bring juice, you don't bring anything that's not like concentrated in some way, shape, or form. Basically, every time they hike out, because they hike out and hike back like once a week to get provisions, and they stagger it so that they've always got stuff rolling in. But you always bring back a bottle of whiskey. And so because they don't have anything to chase with, so you get a buddy and you pour 2 shots, one for your buddy and one for you, and you hold your shot in your left hand. You take the shot at the same time. You face each other and you take the shot at the same time. And as soon as both of you slam your shot glass down, you take your right hand, you reel back, and you slap them across the face as hard as you can.
What the fuck?
And it makes you forget that you need a chaser. So, and it basically, like, instead of making a big song and dance out of like, oh, I'm going to take this shot of whiskey, like, blah,
it's more like, oh shit, I'm going to get slapped.
It's like, oh, I got to get this whiskey down so I can get a better slap in. And I'm not kidding.
Are they like hauling off and slapping the shit out of you?
Yeah, like you want the other person's eyeball to feel like it's gonna bug out, because otherwise they focus more on the shot than on you. And the whole idea is you want to slap them hard enough that they forget that they just took a shot.
Jesus. How many shots do you take?
I think I did like 5.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Enough.
Yeah, enough. On the 5th one, did you feel the slap still, or
no?
Yeah.
I was a lightweight. I've been on trail forever.
Yeah.
I wasn't drinking that much.
I bet they love playing with hikers. They're like, I can slap the shit out of them.
Well, but that was just it, though. It's like we really were slapping the shit out of each other. So, but the thing was, I was taught whiskey slaps by seasoned whiskey slappers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, after the first one, when you realize, like, they're gonna slap me like a man. Like, this is what, and usually it was girls against girls and guys against guys.
Right, that would make sense.
But
gentlemen's whiskey slaps.
Yes. Like a sir. Yeah, but so if after the first one I was like, oh shit, like they mean it. This is
this is gonna happen.
This is for real. Like I kind of was thinking that the slap was gonna be like a girly slap, but it was not. So once I realized that was just how the game was played, it's like once you realize that people aren't fucking around when you play rugby with them, you're like, fuck, if this is how you're going to be, I'll be the same way right back.
Yeah.
So you get really tough about it. So we continued playing whiskey slaps for a considerable amount of time after we left Lonesome Lake. Like we would get into a town, play whiskey slaps just for shits and giggles. And what I didn't realize was when I got home, I remember going to a bar and like being out with a bunch of people, going to a bar. The bar was really overpriced. Somebody was like, let's do a shot, which like, I'm not usually a big shot person at a bar, but it was like, okay, sure. And I said, hey, let's play whiskey slaps really quick. Like, and they all looked at me like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, it's so fun. And I totally, like, that was where my head was at. It was so fun because I had fun doing it with the people that I was doing it with on the trail. So I explain whiskey slaps real fast. And I'm like, so you take your shot and then you slap each other in the face. And it was just this like, Okay. And
It sounds fun.
and I was so excited about it that they were like, there has to be
no other reason she'd be going crazy.
There's got to be a trick to this. Like, obviously this is not what it sounds like. This will be fun. We'll try it. And we played vodka slaps.
Right.
So we each take our shot of vodka and haul back. And it was that obviously she did not understand.
Like,
I was serious.
you were gonna slap
her. It was that same moment that I had with the caretakers. That first one where you're like, oh, I misunderstood when you said really slap hard. Because I hauled back and I slapped this girl across the face as she's like cheerleader slapping me like with the tips of her fingers across my cheek. And I'm like, bam, like it hurt my hand.
Oh.
And there's this like moment where she kind of like, you know, like in a movie, her head like goes off to the side.
Back and to the left.
Yeah, and her husband is standing there looking at me. And he just had this look on his face. Like, it's like in Tommy Boy when Chris Farley says, I've seen a lot of things in my life, but that was awesome. It was just this like, oh man, you didn't get it. You didn't understand how serious I was about slapping each other really hard.
So with Mr. Bordeaux, Mr. Blimey, every time that we would go to get into the car, he would try and get into the driver's side, even though I was driving. Every time.
Oh.
Yeah. And every time he's like, he trying to play it off.
Got me again.
Yeah. One time he like followed me all the way around to the side, and I'm like, I wonder when he's gonna remember, because this is like the third or fourth time it's happened, and like I noticed out of the corner of my eye he got about to the gas tank. He's like, oh fuck shit.
Nope.
And he went back around. We got into the car, buckled in, started up, and I was like, don't think I didn't see you try and get into. He's like, oh yeah, I forgot again. We I the one thing I feel bad about the whole time that he was here was we had the universal language of television between us. Now he said he said on the podcast, he said he wasn't a big TV watcher, but we talked about a lot of TV. Well, yeah, we did talk about Cougar Town. Mm-hmm. And since then, my wife has watched 1.5 episodes of Cougar Town. And she's as far as like, she and I like about the same things. And I would think that Cougar Town would be one of those shows that she would be like, it's not bad. And then I'd watch it and I'd hate it. Right. She hated it. I just think it's, but no, we talked about other things, like maybe not on the podcast, but like, you know, there was a show by Simon Pegg. It was called Space that was on. And he was amazed I knew that. And I was like, you're not going to find most Americans aren't going to know a lot of these British shows. I just kind of am a geek. But yeah, I felt bad because we talked a lot about TV and stuff. I mean, I think he was in the car for about 25 minutes coming back from Winding Stair before I brought up like the London bombings. Remember those that happened like in 2005?
2006, I was in India. Okay. And there, right after that, the American embassy was bombed while I was in Delhi.
Yeah.
It was a big deal.
Yeah, and it was
a big deal for Americans in India.
Yeah, and when the subways happened, I remember I was at work and I was like, oh man, it's crazy. And I had an office job at the time. I remember reading a lot about it when it happened. But yeah, it's like you think you're going to have all this stuff to talk about, but like when you're first getting acquainted with someone, especially.
So how about that bombing?
yeah, it was. Yeah. I think we talked about 9/11 and the bombing. No, because the story I told him was that when I was a teenager, I got to go to Europe for about 15 days, and I was there. I was in London during Wimbledon in '94 or something like that. And how we got to the London the subway bombings was I was talking about how I was going into the underground one time, leaving Wimbledon. We had not made it in.
Minding the gap.
We minded the gap. Well, here's the thing. Like on our way out, there were like hundreds of people, you know, coming up and down these like 200 stairs to get in and out of the underground. And when we went back, there was like no one there at all. We're like, I guess maybe we just missed a train or something like that. Like, I guess that's how it goes. We get all the way to the bottom, and this guy like meets us with an AK-47. Is like, "What are you doing here?" And we're like, "Trying to go back to downtown, like wherever the hell, some kind of circus. I don't know." And they're like, "You've got to get out of here right now." We're like, "What's going on?" And the guy's like, "Somebody jumped in front of the train." It's like, "Okay, sure thing." We get back to our hotel later. We had to take a couple buses and wound up on a train we could get on. And we wound up back at the hotel, and our guide was from Liverpool. And he was like, "Oh, that's what they always say whenever the IRA has either threatened to bomb or has bombed somewhere where they found something." Huh. And later that night, the same thing happened to another people who had made it to Wimbledon. Mm-hmm. They were late to when I was in London, I got to see Grease, the play,
the musical.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Yeah, I got to see Grease.
I saw Beauty and the Beast.
It was like, why the fuck are we doing? Why are we
with
watching?
A black bell?
Really?
Yeah. I know. I made the same face.
Huh. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Beauty and the Beast. Bell.
So I'm sorry, you saw Grease.
I saw Grease, and it's interesting.
It's the word.
Yeah, it was all right. It was something, but yeah, the same thing had happened to some other people. They were late to the Grease because the same thing had happened. So yeah, so it was like just still back. So like yeah, so there I am in the car. We're talking about the IRA and bombings on the underground, and I'm like, geez, what the hell am I talking about? What the hell? I sound like a crazy person, more so than normal. Turkey Hill. Have I talked about the time that I helped a semi-professional basketball player outfit for the trail? Serge Zwicker?
I don't think so.
So I used to be on Trail Place or something like that. And, or White Blaze. I don't even know if White Blaze was in 98, 99. I don't recall. But one day I got a phone call at my house. And I had caller ID. And it popped up. And it was just like all consonants with a couple of I's in there. And like the name Jennifer. I was like, blah, comma, Jennifer. And I'm like, well, is it Jennifer? I don't know. I'll pick up the phone. And so
she sounds cute.
Yeah. So I picked up the phone, and the voice on the other end could not have been further from anyone named Jennifer. It was like, "Hello, my name is Schneider, and my name is Bigger." And I'm like, I'm listening, and I was like, "I'm sorry, what did you need?" And basically he had found, this is in the early days of the internet, he had found my name on Trail Place, and I think I had said there's a way you could say, "Contact me if you have any questions." And I was friendly back then, so I was like, "Yeah, contact me if you have any questions about the AT." And so he did, but it was like my parents' phone number, because I lived with them right after I got off. And this is like a couple years later. And so my parents give this Eastern European sounding guy my phone number at my apartment. And so I kind of made it out, and I was like, okay. And he told me that he was going to go hike the Appalachian Trail. Like, okay, gotcha. And then I was like, real quick, did you say your name is Serge Zwicker? And he's like, yes. And I was like, as in the UNC basketball center for a number of years, Serge Zwicker? I was like, early 90s. He's like, yeah. And I was like, man, and I'm an NC State fan. I was like, man, I don't know if I can help you. And he's like, what? And I was like, I'm an NC State fan. He's like, And so at the time I worked at an outfitter, and I said, hey man, come up and meet me at the outfitter sometime, and we can, I can help you out. And so he asked me for my schedule, and I told him when I was going to be there. And I think Serge Zwicker is like, he's somewhere between like 6'11" and 7'4". I mean, he's huge, and he's a really tall, like blonde guy, really, really nice, but like I couldn't stand him, when I was younger and, watched him play sports, but he had graduated and he had moved on at this point. And so he was taking some time off. He played basketball in Europe, and then he was taking some time off. And so he comes in, and I mean, like, he has to duck to walk in the door. We've said many times, I am not a tall dude at all. And so, like, they had signs hanging down in the aisles. He's having to duck under signs in the aisles. And he tried to make a bunch of jokes about how, like, I was stupid because I pulled for NC State.
Okay.
And he was talking to, like, one of the people who was in charge of events, a guy who ran the bike shop, and myself. All three of us had gone to NC State. And he's like, yeah, this guy here with NC State. And it was like, kind of watch what you're saying. Like, the lady that was doing the talking with us, she's like, you should probably watch out. Like, pretty much everybody here is an NC State fan. He's like, oh, no, I don't know if I can take anybody's help here. And I'm doing a horrible impression of him. I can't remember what it sounded like, but it was just very deep and European. And he's like, so I remember we're standing in over by hiking boots and that kind of thing. He had to get his own sleeping bag made by, I think, Sierra Designs, sewed an additional foot onto a long. So it was a 7.5 foot long bag. And when he bought shirts, he bought as many, like, he was buying some synthetic shirts. He bought 2 of each one, like, each double extra large, bought 2 of them because his mom, ever since he was a kid and had grown this big, she would take one shirt, cut it off, like, underneath it, like, cut a straight line from armpit to armpit, like, across the chest. And then she would take the bottom piece of that and sew it onto the bottom of another double extra large shirt. So it was like 2 double extra large shirts long. And so he got on and hiked for a while. And then I think it was like weeks before he was about to leave, like, his wife's like, oh, by the way, I'm pregnant. So he kind of needed to be around a little bit more. So priorities change, like that happens. And but so the next year I go to trail days and he's there, and of course people are just like, Serge, because, like, he was only on for a few hundred miles, but he made, like, this giant, just went and hiked the AT. And of course people knew him because he was, famous basketball player. But I saw him and I was like, hey, what's going on? And I had to talk to him for a minute. He's like, oh yeah, that's right. But yeah, he was a funny guy. It was just a really funny situation, and, like, just to have someone call your house looking for advice, and it was like, oh geez. But and to have it be somebody that you really didn't like. Yeah. But I mean, he wound up being a really nice guy. I mean,
by association.
Didn't like by the color of the jersey he wore.
All right, so that's it for this week. Hey, so this Sunday, Puss and I are going to be at Mountain Crossings, sitting down with the one and only Baltimore Jack. If you have any questions or comments for the world-famous Baltimore Jack, we'd love to have some phone calls. Give a call to 828-394-4526. You can leave a comment, a question, a great Baltimore Jack story you might have. We just want to be able to share a couple of things with them while we're there. So, yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. Okay. Again, if anybody knows how to recover files, oh, God, help me. All right, bye.
Yeah, I'm pretty good at them.